Okay, we just saw Logan. I'm getting sick of these superhero movies. I'll tell you what, it's just one after the other.
That's serious.
So this will be our spoiler-free thoughts on the film. Just to kind of set it up a little bit, I think it's safe to say we're both big fans of the X-Men films. I've always said that it's like a sleeper series for me. I don't really think about the films that often, but when I'm watching an X-Men film, I'm like, wow, I love X-Men. But I don't think about it that much afterwards, like other things, you know, like Star Wars or whatever. But once I'm sat there and I'm watching an X-Men film, I love it. And Hugh Jackman is, to me, emblematic of the entire series, not just because he's been in every single film. He's just that iconic character that has stood out from the beginning, 17 years ago when we got the first X-Men film. And we've had him in
17 years.
17 years, 9 films, although I guess the Apocalypse and First Class, they're very almost blink and you'll miss it moments, but you know.
No wonder he's like
he's
done with it.
He's done with it,
yeah.
like
so this 17 years.
So this is his final performance as Wolverine.
Yeah.
And I love the quote a few years ago. He said that he was so inspired by the movie Birdman that he felt like he had to keep playing Wolverine until he died, because he just was really inspired by Michael Keaton's performance in that film. But then, obviously, he changed his mind and decided that he wanted to, I think, go out on top in a way, because obviously he puts a lot of time and effort into getting the body and stuff. And, you know,
a lot of working out and a lot of hard diet for him just to do that.
And so, having seen the film now, I think that it was a great one to go out on, because for me, I think it went out on the best note it possibly could. We're not going to spoil anything, obviously, but been looking forward to this film a lot. The third solo Wolverine movie. The first one started off a little rocky. I still quite like X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's not a very good film, but I still quite enjoy it for what it is. The Wolverine I thought was great, the one in Japan, and then this one is something else. I mean, right from the get-go, the first opening scene, you know this is going to be a different kind of film. Rated R, unleashed. And it's kind of interesting because you look at Deadpool last year, that went way, you know, with all the swearing and the sex and the violence and stuff, and that's basically what this is, but it's not a comedy, and it's not taking the piss out of anything. So you take the freedom that Deadpool had and you put it into a serious toned film, and this is what you get. And to me, it was overwhelming. It was absolutely overwhelming. Like,
from the first scene, you actually went, wow.
I'll say it.
Or holy shit or something.
I teared up during the action scenes. It was just so intense. It was so, I just felt like my heart was going to burst out of my chest. I just couldn't believe the level of violence.
That's when you teared up.
Yeah, like it was just like not that it was making me sad or anything like that, or happy, but it was just like like fucking hell.
Because there's a lot of emotion in it. When the Wolverine gets out there,
it's a primal kind of thing.
He's so great when he is proper in Wolverine mode.
Right.
You almost feel like part of him comes into you because you get so into it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's different in this movie because he's old but not obsolete.
Yeah, it's an older Logan. You know, it's set years after all the other X-Men movies. You've seen that from the trailers.
Yeah, so it's not a spoiler.
No, and
you can tell that he's old and he's worn down and
I mean, you see
stuff like that. Hang on, and usually in the old Wolverine movies, you don't really care that much if he gets scratched up a bit and hit and stuff because you know he'll bounce back.
Yes.
Because you keep thinking, he'll be alright. But in this, it hurt me every time he got hit.
Yep.
Every time I saw him, something like that, I just, you know, it was like watching an old man getting hit in the street. It was like, it was so uncomfortable.
That's the brilliant thing about it. And again, not spoiling anything because you see in the trailer how the scene where he's putting the shirt on and his hand's shaking and you can see that he's got wounds that haven't healed. And so he's kind of, you know, it's like he's reaching the last of his days in a way.
He's withering.
And that's very apparent, and that's going to delve into more with the plot. But it's this kind of last hurrah, really. You have Patrick Stewart back as Professor X, and he just looks. I mean, obviously Patrick Stewart, I believe, is in his 70s, but they made him look even older. You know, one of his eyes is discoloured slightly, and just.
He's supposed to be 90.
Yeah. And I loved the feeling of it. It felt like it was they kind of put these tiny details into it that that made it feel like it was in the future, but not too much. I mean, the only real obvious thing was this scene where they're driving down a highway and there are these big kind of the big lorries that drive stuff up and down freeways, but they didn't have a car in it. It was automated. Like the automated just trucks of stuff with no car on the front, just the flatbed.
I
with
didn't
the things.
notice that.
Yeah, and so it was just like a tiny detail. It didn't seem too far-fetched. I think it's set in 2029, so there was...
Phones and the TVs looked the same.
Yeah, it didn't go over the top with the futuristic thing. I love that.
I was thinking about that, actually, because 2029, was it?
Yeah. And so you have questions about what happened to the other X-Men and things like that, but it's very much focused on this new character, this girl, and it's almost like it is a road movie with this girl who comes into the film with Logan and Professor X, and that's all we really need to talk about when it comes to the plot. I think what really stood out to me about the film was the performances. There's 3 incredible performances in there: Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, and the young Spanish girl who plays Laura in the film. I thought she was brilliant in a role where she has hardly any dialogue at all. And then
very good she was.
Yeah, just brilliant right from the beginning, and she conveys a lot of different emotions as well, and she was just stunning. And then Hugh Jackman, brilliant as ever, and probably the most he's had to work with, I think, in an X-Men film with this character in terms of the weight behind everything. And then Patrick Stewart.
Well, he's got experience with, dramatic
Yeah.
performances.
And then Patrick Stewart, again, probably I think his best performance. It's just so powerful because he's another character who's going through his last days in a way, and you can see just everything.
Broke my heart.
Oh, you can just see the weight of everything that's happened to him, and he just gives an incredible performance. I mean, these are award-worthy performances that won't get recognised because that's just the way it is, and that's fine. But
because of the genre, right?
Right. And that's what I loved about the film, was that it was different. I mean, it had the same mold. You had a big bad guy who Logan would have to fight, things like that.
I liked the bad guy too.
Yes.
He was very good.
Yeah, he didn't. I didn't feel like he was trying too hard to be the bad guy of the film, which was good. And
he reminded me of Johnny Depp in the way he talked. He had the same way of talking.
Yeah, and there's a good supporting cast with the characters and stuff, but it's a very simple story, really.
Come on, Stephen Merchant was really good too.
Stephen Merchant, I wasn't sold on him to begin with because he uses his normal voice, and I know him too well from like British comedy stuff.
Normal voice.
Yeah, so
that's where I recognized him. When I first saw him, I was like, oh, that's a weird looking guy.
Yeah.
I can't believe I said that. But he
plays
an albino, okay? So,
the eyes are kind of bulbous. Seriously, Steve, he could be your brother. If you get that reference, well done.
Oh God, what if he watches the review?
He won't. Don't be ridiculous.
You don't know that.
I do know that, right? So,
anyways, the first time I recognized him was when he spoke in his weird British accent. He pronounces R's like and that's the way I recognized him. I was like, that's him, right? You did tell me he was going to be in it.
Yes, I did.
And then I recognized him, like, thought it was him.
Yeah.
I thought it was good.
So, the action was great, and as you said, like every hit you feel it because of this different version of Logan in a way.
I was sat like that a lot because I
was
very uncomfortable.
The choreography of the action was great, and it was again it was so brutal. It's the most violent comic book movie I've ever seen. Just unbelievable, like how far they pushed it, and I think that it was appropriate to the story they were trying to tell.
Did you say it was the most violent one?
I think so, yeah.
Deadpool was...
No, because again, and even if it wasn't...
that's a comedy, I know. This was dark, but...
I honestly, nothing is standing out in my head about violence in Deadpool. I know it was a violent film, don't get me wrong, but I can think of about 6 different shots in Wolverine that I couldn't believe they pushed it that far with the gore and the blood and all that kind of stuff. And what this reminded me of was, it was like taking a superhero movie, but doing a kind of plot like a road movie of a normal drama, and then if it was made in the late 80s and 90s, where you had those great action films like Predator, Terminator 2, things like that, where you have them dropping F-bombs all the time, like people would, and you have this intense violence, and so it really is unlike any comic book film we've seen before. There have been R-rated ones like Watchmen and Blade, things like that, but this one takes it to another level. And again, with the Deadpool comparison, this is a serious film.
It was darker than the Batman trilogy as well.
Yeah.
It was...
And I love the film. Anything else you really want to say before we round off this spoiler-free section?
If you've seen the trailers, the first trailer they released was, it didn't look like the Wolverine movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, get down. No reaction. Right. It seemed like just a drama movie on the road thing. You know? It seemed like a father-daughter movie.
Sure, yeah.
And then a tiny bit of Wolverine action, like a few seconds in that first trailer. And I fell in love with that trailer. I absolutely loved it. I loved the way he looked. I loved that he was old.
Yeah.
I could feel it just from that trailer. And it reminded me of The Last of Us. He kind of looks like Joel.
Sure.
A lot in this.
And that's one thing I liked, is that there was a lot of jokes about The Last of Us, and it did look very kind of almost inspired by it. But when you see the film, it really isn't.
No. It was not like that.
Completely different relationship, completely different kind of story, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second trailer, that was more Wolverine. That was you know, then come the action. I see what the girl is all about.
I think the first trailer was like, we're doing something different here, guys.
Yes.
Like, take a look at this. And then the second one is like, but we're still going to do some of this stuff, and you know, get ready for that as well.
It's still one of these movies. Don't worry. You know, or you got to go see it.
But it was just,
it triggered. I mean, the need for the drama and the more seriousness, and it really, really did pull it off.
So I hate to do this because like it annoys me when other people do it, but I think it's worth saying. I think this is my favorite comic book film ever. Like, and that's a lofty thing to say. And I don't think it's the best by any means, but I've never bought into the story of a comic book film like this before. Like, it just, I mean, obviously it has the mutants and stuff like that, so it's not like, oh, oops, super realistic, but there's just something about it that was just so much more, like, visceral. Like, it just, I've never felt like that watching a comic book film. I watch A Dark Knight and amazing films, much better than this one, but, like, there's just something about this one that just really hits you in the chest. At least, for me, it did.
I still think Batman and Robin is better.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. Yeah. So again, a lofty thing to say, but and again, favorite. I'm saying favorite, not the best, but
it's pretty high up there.
Oh yeah, and
far and away. This is more about the story than the action.
Exactly, and that's what I loved about it.
In other movies, you look forward to the action, but in this one, you don't want the action to happen unless you don't like Wolverine.
And there's so many variables. I mean, the Avengers is like probably the perfect kind of fun, colourful, action-filled, like, you know, superhero movie, and then you got Batman for the darker stuff. But this is just something else, and maybe it's even on its own category outside of all the other comic book films and stuff. But I really hold it in that high of a regard. There was a couple of things I didn't like.
Yeah.
There's nitpicks. There's definitely nitpicks, but I mean,
there are a few things that I was like, I wish they'd done that differently.
Yeah.
Because I wish that I reacted more. Not going to say anything.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We'll do it as a separate video.
Yeah, but it's so some things here and there, but overall, it's like 95% of it I just really loved.
It had some humor too, and it was the perfect amount, which was not much at all.
It wasn't exaggerated the way they do now.
There was nothing that made me laugh out loud. Just a couple of chuckles, and it was appropriate, and it felt too.
Oh, yeah, you did. Well, not out loud, but you did chuckle loud.
Yeah. There's just a few sprinkling, you know, in the appropriate moments, and and the ending of the film just felt again appropriate to the story it was telling, and it felt different from other. I mean, it was the same in some ways, but it was different in other ways, and I really appreciated that, and it had me thinking about it kind of long after the credits had rolled. Like, it really just, it's a film that stays with you, and I find that a lot of comic book films don't do that, you know. So for Hugh Jackman, I think it was the perfect film for him to end this run on, and truly, I think a special film in the genre where it's usually a very entertaining film, but not much more than that. And I felt like this was a bit more than that.
It's a deeper one.
Yeah, it was a deeper one and a great. And I don't know if like this would be a great film if it was Hugh Jackman coming into this and he'd never played Wolverine before. It'd be a great film, but you have that added weight of the past 17 years. And it really plays into it. Yes, you have a previous relationship with his performance throughout all the films, and so it adds that extra level to it.
You come to care about him, and and then obviously fans all know that Hugh Jackman's been saying for a few years now that he's not doing anymore. This is it. So that's not a secret.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, it makes the movie even more emotional.
Yeah, and you can tell that he was giving his all in a lot of those scenes in many different ways. Right, so the battery's running out on the camera now, so I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Suffice to say, we both loved it, and we'll do a spoiler-filled review, which I'll probably post in about a week once everyone's seen it and stuff like that. So, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you. 'Cause